I'm Matt Handy, and you're listening to My Last Relapse. Okay, Randy Grimes. How's it going?
Good. How are you, man?
Good, man. I'm really good. I'm thankful. It's the best Thanksgiving I've had in a long time.
I bet. Congratulations on all that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so you are probably one of the most unique people that I've had on so far. You've had a really distinguished history and past. You played in the NFL, and then after that, you obviously have a crazy story about all of that and
Right.
how you ended up like getting into what you're into today. So let's start with who you are.
Who I am, Randy Grimes. Born and raised up in East Texas. Football wasn't religion in my family, but it was a close second. And, I was fortunate enough to be able to go off to Baylor and play and had a great college career. Drafted in the second round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 1983. I was the 45th player selected that year out of the whole country. And, I was excited about it because Tampa Bay had just gone to the playoffs the year before. So I felt like I was going to a playoff team. And little did I know what the next 10 years would be like. But we were excited. I met my wife the very first day, our freshman year at Baylor. And we went out that night and got married after our junior year. So, she was destined to be a part of this. And, we were excited to be going to Tampa to not only start our careers, my career, but also our marriage, our family in Tampa Bay, in the seaside community of Tampa, Florida. And, we loaded up everything we had in a small little U-Haul on the Baylor campus and hooked it up to my burgundy Cutlass Supreme.
Oh, nice.
And out I-10 East we went, to start it all. And, I was that guy willing to do whatever I had to stay out on the field. I was that guy who didn't want somebody else to be in my position. I was that guy that didn't want to let anybody down. I was that guy who wanted to stay off the injury report or not be in line to see the doctor every day because, once you get that reputation of always being hurt, you never get away from it.
Yeah.
And I was that guy willing to not do that. So what did that look like for me was taking handfuls of opiates every day. We had a drug safe in the middle of our training room. And first of all, it was never locked, but if it ever was accidentally locked, we had 3 white guys that started on defense. Their jersey numbers were the combination of that safe, the whole decade that I was there. So you could just go get whatever you needed out of there. But, it was never locked. And, that's where the whole addiction thing started. And, people ask me, well, when did you know that it was a problem? In September of 1990, I woke up on my couch in Tampa, Florida, and, I was all beat up and bruised and fingernails all torn up and dehydrated and everything you are after an NFL football game. And I didn't remember any of it. I played that whole game in Detroit in a blackout and traveled home in a blackout and drove home from where I parked my car in a blackout. And I didn't remember any of it. So that's when I knew that it was out of control. I was taking so many opiates and so many benzos before games that, I didn't even remember playing. And really the last 2-3 years of my career, I don't even remember playing. I was taking so much stuff and I looked at it more like a necessary evil, because I wanted to feed my family. I wanted to be all pro. I wanted that next big contract. Those are ways that I justified throwing those pills down every day. And I didn't look at it like it was an addiction. I looked at it like it was something I had to do to be the best that I could be. And, I can, that last year, The 10 years that I was there, I had 5 different head coaches, which is unheard of. You can never get any continuity going when you have 5 head coaches. I had 6 different offensive line coaches, which was my position coach. And that last year, and it was 1992, and after the last game every year, if you weren't going to the playoffs, which we never were, then you would come in on that Monday after the Sunday game. You would have an exit meeting with your coach. You'd watch the film from the day before, game before, and pretty much clean out your locker. And back then, you would leave and not come back till spring. Now it's more of a year-round job, but back then you would come back for minicamp. And I can remember standing in my locker after that last game on a Monday, and Sam Weiss was my coach. And I remember him walking behind me, and I had a locker right next to the door that exited the training room or the locker room. And I can remember standing there looking at my locker, and I felt a hand on my shoulder. I felt the breeze of somebody walking by. And I heard the words, "Randy, your services won't be needed here anymore in Tampa." And as I turned to look to see who said that, all I could see was Sam Weiss hitting that silver bar in the middle of that door and exiting the locker room. And I'm thinking, wow, not even man enough to look me in the eye and say that I'm fired. All the blood, sweat, and tears that I've left on football fields all over this country. And he can't even look me in the eye and say, we don't need you anymore. And, I can remember just raking everything out of my locker into a black trash bag and walking out the back door. And, Randy Grimes, the football player, didn't exist anymore. And the reason I bring that up is because, I already had this rage and addiction going. And now you throw in this transitional trauma where I don't have a uniform, I don't have a playbook, I don't have an itinerary to go by, then that was just throwing gas on an already raging dumpster fire. And that really set the addiction in motion. I already had these injuries, and they were getting worse the older I got. And the more I needed pills, the more my tolerance got higher. I needed more and more and more. I retired back here to Houston and was doctor shopping all over town. You could do that back then in the 90s. And, I was out of control for many years. And it affected my family. It affected my finances. It affected my work life and everything else. I had a great job, and I lost it as a result of the addiction. And, I came very close to losing my family, very close. They put up with me as long as they could, and then they finally set some boundaries. And, that's when I finally put my hand up and asked for help.
So do you think that if the addiction hadn't really taken root during those years that you would have continued to play?
I don't know. I played back in an era where we used to beat the hell out of each other, during practice.
Oh, yeah. I was born in 89, so I watched I'm not really a professional sports guy anymore, but all growing up, it was like in the 90s and the early 2000s watching. Actually, I'm a Raider fan, and the only Super Bowl I watched them go to was against the Buccaneers.
Yeah. That was what, 2002?
2002.
Yeah.
And they should have won that game, and they fumbled 4 times and threw like multiple interceptions, and they only lost by like 2 touchdowns or something.
Yeah. And the Raiders had a center that went to Tijuana the night before and never came back.
Yep.
You remember that story?
Yeah.
Craziness.
Sure.
But, I played in an era where we used to beat the hell out of each other. So we had injuries all the time. And it was crazy because that was the mentality back then. That Bear Bryant, if you don't practice hard, you're not going to play hard, that mentality. And, a lot of the injuries that we sustained back then was from our own guys.
Yeah.
And now it's so different. Now they hardly ever put on pads because the collective bargaining agreements have reduced practice time to practically nothing. And, they don't have as many injuries, and guys are having longer careers as a result of practicing less.
Do you think so I look at like basketball, and you can see over the decades as the skill has tightened and the game has improved. Do you think that the less practice is improving or taking away from the skill on the field?
I think a little of both. Okay. I think guys are healthier now, but maybe they don't have as many. They don't have the talents and the
Like the fundamentals,
fundamentals and the repetition that you get in practice. So I don't think they're blocking as well as they used to. They're not tackling as well as they used to. But then again, they're bigger, stronger, quicker, meaner than they've ever been. And that makes up for a lot of it.
Do you think that the bigger, tougher, stronger, all that, additionally, like to like the pool of who they're pulling from, but do you think the drug testing and the like anti-doping and all that stuff contributes to the physical prowess of the players today?
Yeah, and they're not really doing it like they should. They say they're drug testing, but they really don't want to catch anybody, and so. Either guys are warned beforehand, or some things are overlooked. Or it's the testing in the NFL is kind of a joke, and always has been.
Okay.
Even back when we knew that we were going to be tested for steroids, then they always gave us like 3 or 4 weeks in advance, not knowing that they were going to come in and test us. So. It was kind of all a joke.
Yeah, the 90s were like a steroid era for yeah. Do you think that the pool that they are pulling from today is more talented naturally than it was? Like, do you think that the skill levels have accelerated?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, guys are so much bigger now.
It's crazy.
Just going around with my grandson, we were visiting different colleges because he was being recruited out of high school, and going up to these colleges and seeing the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen and even some of the skill positions, they're just huge.
Yeah,
they're just big kids, and that's just corn-fed. That's coming out of high school like that.
Yeah. I remember my dad went to BYU, and he was gonna walk on, and went to like whatever it was, however you walk on to the football team. He used to like play basketball with a bunch of people like for fun. And I guess a bunch of players were like, dude, you should come try out. And he went to this tryout, whatever. And my dad's 6'3". And he was like, dude, I looked like the smallest person on the field. Like, wow.
I believe that. Yeah.
And then I've got a cousin who married, he was a linebacker for the Steelers, and I think somebody else as well. But now he's coaching for Arizona, like a university over there somewhere. But he's Samoan or Tongan. This dude, they had like a 13-pound baby. So
what?
My cousin's Tongan and he's Samoan, I think.
How does that even happen?
They had it might have been 10, but either way, they had a monster baby. Like, geez.
Wow.
But okay, so what was your childhood like?
Great. I had a great childhood. I had no childhood trauma to speak of. I had great parents. They raised me in church. They raised me on the football field, on the baseball field. I had an older brother and an older sister, both great role models.
Okay.
I looked up to them, and we had the classic family life back then.
American pie.
Yeah, and there was no trauma. So there really wasn't anything that I could blame, what I went through on.
That's an important piece to put into play, right? Because I think there is an understanding that a lot of addiction can be centered around trauma, but they aren't mutually exclusive. It doesn't give a fuck who you are. It doesn't care where you come from, what you look like, what color you are, what your education level is. It doesn't care. If you get that hook in you, it's totally indiscriminate. It could be the president of the United States. It could be a dishwasher at Denny's.
Yeah.
It doesn't care.
And I can still remember the first time I took opioids. That's what I was missing. That's what I needed. That's what's going to keep me out on the football field, and that's what's going to make my career longer, and that's what's going to get me that next big contract.
Do you have any family history of alcoholism?
No. Well, I'll take that back. I did have a distant uncle that my father would never let us go around. But other than that, no history of alcoholism or anything.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
Now, opiates are a unique drug in the world. A lot of other drugs are uncomfortable, right? Like meth, a lot of stimulants are very uncomfortable. Even alcohol gets uncomfortable, but opiates is a very comforting drug. It's a very, and that's what I did too. I slammed heroin for 15 years. And I did start with pills as well. But this was in 2004, 5, 6, and my exposure to pharmaceuticals got cut as soon as I tried oxys. They changed the formula and I didn't have access to be able to smoke them anymore. So I, within 3 weeks, was doing heroin.
That's when they started coating them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They went from OCs to OPs.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, people were still, this was the mid 2000s, and I had friends that were like flying to Florida, flying to Louisiana, like going places to doctor shop, because in San Diego, it wasn't like a thing. You couldn't, you could doctor shop for benzos, but you couldn't doctor shop for opiates. It just wasn't a thing, at least that we know of.
Right.
And then we discovered Tijuana, and it was over.
And you never knew what you were going to get down there, though, right?
No, I mean, you can go to pharmacies there. You can go to like a pharmacy, like a real pharmacy.
Okay.
And you don't need a prescription. You just go in there and be like, I want 300 oxys, I want 200 Xanax, I want this, I want that. And they literally like scale it out. They don't count them, they scale it out, and they hand you a big bag of boxes, and then you pay them, and that's it.
Wow.
And you walk across the border, you go across the bridge, or if you go the other way, it's like you cross the street. And as soon as you really cross into TJ, all pharmacies. It's just a huge row of pharmacies.
So they were ready for you.
Oh, yeah. And then you go a little bit farther, and you're in Zona Norte, which is all of the strip clubs are right there. And like, that's like the war zone in TJ. And it's right there.
Wow.
You could, from San Diego in the 90s, you can see the war going on. Like, you could hear the bullets, you can hear the guns, you can see tracers and stuff at night. Like, it was wild.
That's crazy. And I can remember sitting in waiting rooms, even here around Houston, and I would see van loads of people pull up from Louisiana, from Tennessee, Mississippi, people coming into these, because, we were one of the, other than Florida, especially South Florida, we were one of the doctor shopping hotspots of the country.
Really?
Was Houston, yeah. And, I always say, just by the grace of God, that I didn't find heroin, because heroin would have been a solution to my problems.
Yeah.
Because it was cheaper, more available. Coming up with $300 or $400 just to see a doctor, and then another $300 or $400 for the prescription. That was getting kind of pricey. So heroin would have been a solution to.
Yeah. You're very lucky, right? And maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't have. The reality is you're already involved, right? And you're taking really dangerous drugs, because you've got not just the opiates and all the other crazy shit, but like, I don't know, were you taking Vicodin? Were you taking, like, what were you taking?
Oh, anything I get my hands on. Every pharmacy gave me something different. And they always threw in Xanax on top of it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The amount of acetaminophen that most pillheads take is staggering.
Right.
It was like, when we got into pills, we learned about the dangers of acetaminophen pretty quick, and we started looking up ways and researching ways to extract the opiates out of it. We were doing like these I don't even know if it worked, right? But like, we would do like cold water extracts, where we'd like get these ropes, and first we would break it up, put it in a water solution and freeze it. And then as it was like unfreezing, we would spin it with a rope. and try to like extract it. That was crazy.
That is crazy. That's like scientific there.
Yeah, I mean,
Y'all were like splitting an atom.
yeah, yeah, and we were kids. I was 16 when I started doing this stuff, right?
Wow.
And but I knew that like I knew a guy. He lived across the street. It's funny because this in the same house, we would look out the front window, and they'd be out there with headlamps at 3 a.m. cutting their grass with scissors. Yeah,
That's awesome.
It was, dude. It was so funny. And then 2 doors down was the drug dealer, and then there was like me. I was 17 now, had my own place, and like was throwing these mad parties. And we would watch like it was one night. It was probably like 2 a.m. All these cops pulled up on the street, and everybody came in the house. We're like, fuck, what are we gonna do? Like, we're all underage. We're all doing drugs. We're drinking, and they're raiding the tweaker pad.
Oh,
we're
wow.
like, whew.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Close.
That was a close one for sure. But so yeah, I'm always interested to talk to people who have a good childhood that fell into addiction, because I had a pretty decent childhood as well. I had good parents, really loving, present, but they had 10 kids.
Yeah.
Right? How do you like spread your time, distribute your time evenly or like effectively with that many kids? By the time I was 13, everybody was born, right? So they had really, really little kids. And by the time I got kicked out, I was 16. I got kicked out for doing drugs in their house. And they were like, you got to go. Because they had a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old. They had like really little kids there.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, you got to go.
Wow.
But the interesting part of it to me is that everybody who isn't like influenced environmentally to do it, like how they got into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like yours is crazy. This is obviously a very unique way to get into. Probably not. You probably saw this a lot though.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I wasn't the only one doing that.
Yeah.
I probably was one of the few that took it as far as I did, where I was playing in a Blackout. I can remember once getting knocked out in Detroit, same team, different game, different year, and having a concussion so bad that I walked off and sat on Detroit's bench. Had no idea where I was. And the bad thing is their doctor put me back in the game. But, that was the insanity of the league. And, like I said, I had no childhood trauma. My marriage was great. I met the girl of my dreams and married her. And so it was all about, and I don't want it to be the final excuse because I loved opioids once I got into it. But it all started because I wanted to stay out on that field and to play and practice through those injuries. And, it wasn't until, even with all that going on, it wasn't until 2009, September, that I finally put up my hand and asked for help. And I'd gone to a couple other detoxes before then, but it never took.
Yeah.
And
what was like the final straw?
Losing my family.
Yeah.
That was going to be huge. And they finally, like I said, put down some boundaries that I had to respect or realize or I was going to lose everything. And, I was also having seizures like crazy as a result of withdrawal from benzos.
Benzos, yeah.
And so that was an issue too. And, back then there was nothing out there for former retired players, NFL players. There was
any professional players, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I think baseball might have had a little something, but there was nothing out there for former NFL players. And it just so happened that whoever my wife called that day up in New York on Park Avenue at the NFL office, they knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. And that's how I got on an airplane that evening to West Palm Beach to treatment.
So how long after you left the NFL did this happen?
Oh my gosh. I left the league in 93 and this didn't happen until 2009.
So like once you're up, is that like the Players Association? Like are you just a part of it forever?
Yeah.
Okay. So
alumni.
Okay. So Do you work at all with vets?
Oh yeah, yeah.
How come, like, this is what blows my mind, is these are the people that, like, protect us while we sleep, right? Um, and the NFL, like, I get it. This is like everybody loves the NFL. Everybody loves football. And they kind of like set the bar as far as like sports in the United States and what's possible as far as engagement and entertainment and stuff like that. But how come the NFL can have such a rigorous program today around their alumni and their past players, and we treat our vets the way that we do?
There's no excuse for it.
I don't think so at all.
Nothing. And who do you blame for that? Do you blame the current administration or past administration? Do you blame the VA for not stepping in and creating programs for these guys? Nonprofits do the best that they can to help these guys, but they don't.
But that's them giving back to themselves.
Right.
That's the craziest part is,
right.
And I kind of get it. Not kind of, but I do get it because the treatment industry is full of a bunch of addicts that are giving back to other addicts. So I get why it works out that way, because I don't know if you could put that on the current administration or like this started somewhere, obviously, and they inherit a lot of problems. I get that, whatever, but every administration does have the chance to kind of fix problems.
Right.
I don't know. This is such a big problem, though.
Yeah.
Like, how do you fix this?
And don't give the NFL too much credit, because it's people like me and advocates like me that got the ball rolling.
Well,
otherwise they wouldn't have done anything. Yeah,
I want to get into that for sure. Because you're doing something kind of specific now with the Players Association around treatment, right?
Right.
So what is it that you do?
Well, back in 2009, after I realized that there was nothing out there for former players, I went to the NFL and went to the Alumni Association, and we started a program called the Player Care Foundation, where we were reaching out to guys that had mental health and substance abuse issues, and usually it was both, obviously. And after I started going, this is like 6 months after I got sober. So I was, I didn't know my head from my ass back then, but I did know that I wanted to make everything that I'd went through and everything that I'd put everybody through, I wanted to make it mean something. And so I started going out and sharing my story on the alumni's dime. And, guys' hands started going up all over the country.
Yeah.
And guys were willing to come in. They just needed to know that they weren't alone. They needed to know that they weren't the only ones out there struggling like that. And, a lot of people wanted to blame it on CTE and all that. But, you can't blame it on CTE until you remove the substance, and see what the extent of the CTE is. And a lot of that's post-mortem anyway. You don't know the extent of the CTE until after you die, unfortunately. But, we started going out and sharing our story. And, at the time, I was the only guy out there doing it. Baseball got involved with it because there's nothing out there really for former Major League Baseball players.
Only current, right?
Only current, yeah. And pretty much every sport you can think of that has an organization that supports their former players or riders in the Jockeys Guild, for example, that's who we've been working with. And that's NASCAR, that's golf, that's PGA, LPGA.
Golf's another one that's massive.
And like I said, the jockeys, MMA, hockey. The NBA,
that's a big one too.
the NBA. We've helped quite a few former basketball players, and so that was kind of God's way of keeping me connected to a game I love so much. And people ask me all the time what I miss most about football, and it's not the game. I miss the locker room.
Yeah,
and that camaraderie, that recovery has given me, and to stay in touch with the different players and different sports is kind of my new locker room.
Did you, obviously you probably paid attention to the whole Aaron Hernandez thing.
Right.
Did you ever have any interaction with him?
No.
Okay.
No.
That was a crazy case.
That was crazy.
And then when you said post-mortem, I was like, oh, yeah. Because when they finally got to look, the extent of damage that had been done was it was like the worst case that they had ever seen.
Right.
But was there substance abuse there too?
I'm sure there was.
I'm sure. Yeah.
You know,
I tell people all the time that people who have mental illness diagnoses don't always have substance abuse, but everybody who has substance abuse has a mental illness issue.
Right.
Period. That's just how it is.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that it's a permanent diagnosis. It doesn't mean that it's like a lifelong type of problem you got to deal with. A lot of mental illness that goes hand in hand with drug abuse subsides over time. But it's like you said, you got to get off the drugs in order for any of that to be addressed.
Right. And like you said, you know, what's the extent of, you know, we don't know the extent of it until, we remove the drugs.
Yeah. And so today, like what are you doing today around all this?
Well, I started a nonprofit called Pro Athletes in Recovery.
Okay.
I continue to reach out to different guys. I don't really address any current players because each team has their own protocols, but I do address all the former players from all the different sports. And, you know, we're a nonprofit that just kind of guides people in the right direction, where they need to go. You know, what is it that you need? You know, what's the most appropriate place for you? How do we help your family? You know, that's the most overlooked part of this, is how the family is overlooked. And we support aftercare because that's the most important part as far as we're concerned, the most overlooked part of the puzzle. And so we support aftercare, whether it's sober living, IOP, OP, you know, anything. I mean, we won't pay your bills or anything like that, but we'll certainly help you with aftercare.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, there is no medical billing code for family therapy. There is no medical billing code for physical education, for nutritional education. You can't charge for any of that stuff. And so that is a massively not just neglected, but just kind of skimmed over. They kind of like meet the bare minimums. We've got family day on the weekends, right? But it's like, yeah, but this guy came from New Hampshire. Like his family's not coming. Right. Or this family is like so sick and tired of this person. They just want him in treatment. Right. And it's like, if there is no, I tell people all the time, you can't send a healing person back into a sick situation and expect them to continue to heal.
Right.
It doesn't make logical sense, but practically it is setting people up for failure. And yeah, I think the way that I'm reading a book right now, it's called Slaying the Dragon. Have you heard of this?
Yeah. No, I've heard of it. Yeah.
By William White, right? Kind of like a foreperson and authority in addiction medicine research. And he was like one of the head honchos at the Recovery Research Institute for a long time. But I'm reading this book and I'm going, like, I have all these questions, right? I'm new in the treatment industry, and I'm really looking for like guidance on how to avoid some of the pitfalls that I feel like a lot of people fall into in the treatment industry, right? And I have all these questions that I'm asking other people in the industry, and I'm getting unsatisfactory answers. I open this book and I'm like, oh my gosh, like
there's all your answers.
There it is, all right there, right? And we have the benefit of, he was born in like the 40s or something. This guy's older, right? And he watched all the evolution of like the privatizing of the treatment industry. He actually, right now in the book where I'm at, he's talking about where it went from the field of addiction to the treatment industry and what that transition was like, and how the language changed, and how the intention around what people were actually doing in the service side of it, how that changed. And then there was like a massive influx of treatment, right? And they were like, we don't have formally trained people to fill all the need. So they started hiring people out of treatment. They would have you in treatment and hire you before you left treatment to stay there and work for them, right? And then it started this whole cycle of like really ill-prepared people being in the field of addiction, and now it's becoming an industry where now you're answering to like authorities, right? And it's just super interesting. Like,
and that's how I started in the industry. You know, like I said, 6 months sober. going out and just sharing my story. At least I wasn't doing any clinical stuff,
That's the crazy part.
or making any advice to anybody.
Yeah, that's what they were doing, right? They gave him these titles. It was these crazy titles. It was like clinical, no, client clinical, client clinical liaison, and they would like do the 12 steps with them in treatment, and then they try to like connect like a clinical.
Is that like the beginning of peer support?
So it's funny because the Recovery Research Institute, so you know what SAMHSA is, right?
Mm-hmm.
SAMHSA in 2009 changed their definition of recovery, right? It used to be like a 12-step lingo type definition, and now when you look it up, like the highlighted part of the definition is to live a self-directed life. And I'm reading about that because that's really interesting to me too. Like, why did they change it? Why did they use this wording? And what was the reason, like why they specifically did it at that time? And it was the peer support movement really kind of guided that language change, and also directionally, like the way that they were trying to push people into recovery.
Oh, wow.
Right now, I'm trying to get the head of SAMHSA to come on the podcast.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll happen because he's a government employee. Right. And so right now where we're at is we're talking to their PR department to see if it's appropriate for him to come on.
Okay.
But I got a couple emails from him that
That's
was
good.
interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're probably further along than anybody else has got.
I don't think anybody else cares to talk about it, right? Like, ultimately, this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to get guidance on where to take this company directionally so that 10 years from now, when people talk about Harmony Grove and Matthew Handy, they know that, like, I might have made some enemies up front, but I did it 100% worried about outcomes for people. It wasn't like because I'm trying to spit in your face or like criticize what you're doing. I care about what happens to the person on the street that has been labeled treatment resistant or a chronic relapser, or basically the people that I was, right? Like there was no hope for me. I was living under that bridge. I robbed that bank and I thought I was going to prison for the rest of my life.
Wow.
That's just how it was.
Wow.
There was nobody out there that I knew that was like, Matt, there's hope for you. Right. And I want those people to know that I'm here saying there's hope for you.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's great. And, a few years ago, in an effort to bring more credibility to the movement that I was starting, and not only that, but to gain more knowledge on the whole addiction thing, I got to be friends with. This was out at the Super Bowl. I met Jerome Adams, the Surgeon General.
Wow.
And he was willing to do whatever he had to help us out, to make us more knowledgeable, to do the next right thing as far as the nonprofit and addiction was going. And he was a huge help, and still is to this day. He's still behind the scenes helping athletes in recovery. And it's been that was huge.
That's amazing
to get his name on there.
That's crazy. The head of SAMHSA, this is the first director of SAMHSA that's actually in recovery too.
Oh wow!
The rest of them haven't been in recovery.
Very cool.
Yeah. So he's got a really like unique lens that he's trying to attack everything against. But the Surgeon General, that's a mover and shaker right there.
Yeah, and he's a big sports fan, so that helped.
Yeah.
Do you think that all addiction is based in trauma?
No. I look at yours, right?
Right.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Because that's the word on the street, that all addiction is based in trauma.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I do think that they are a major driver. I think if you polled 100,000 people, I would venture to say that 999,000 of them have trauma that they can point to.
Mm-hmm.
There might be one, there might be two, but look at you. Mm-hmm. And you're not the only person that I've talked to.
But is addiction itself a trauma?
I think addiction itself causes trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But let me ask you a question. Can you abuse an inanimate object?
Yeah, I guess you could.
Right? Like, there are some people that say that you can't abuse an inanimate object. You can't abuse this can, right? You can't, like, throw this against the wall and then count that as abuse.
But could you worship it? And is that abuse?
So this is the thing, right? people are saying that drugs are inanimate objects and you can't abuse them. You're abusing yourself, right? You're abusing the people around you. You're abusing circumstances or whatever. But like the use or abuse isn't dictated or predicated on the thing itself. It is an inanimate object, and that has nothing to do with what you do with it, right? I think that trauma really points to like a preconditioning towards certain behavioral patterns.
Mm-hmm.
But something that I noticed was that there might be trauma, there might be no trauma, there might be like an accidental introduction of a substance, like through surgery or whatever, that it leads you down.
Or weight loss,
Weight loss. Dude, there's all kinds of ways that people get introduced to the problematic substance, right? Or the problematic behavior. But something that I noticed is that if people have a codependent or an enabling relationship with somebody, they might have been molested as a kid. But somewhere along the way, the crux of the problem becomes that enabling relationship. That is what you can point to say, if this doesn't stop, this is going to kill them. Right? The trauma is not going to kill them anymore. They've already gotten to this point. But that relationship, the enabling and the codependency, will put parents in a position where they have now taken responsibility from their kids, which means that they've taken responsibility for their kids, right? And if they don't stop that destructive behavior within themselves and the relationship, so if they don't stop the negative reinforcement of the positive reinforcement of negative behavior, they are responsible to a certain point for the death of their child.
I agree.
And so it's really hard for professionals, like for us, right? We understand.
Right.
We can kind of see the forest through the trees. Not only that, we're not intimately involved in that situation. It's really hard for us to go to a non-addict parent who really just desperately loves their child and wants them not to suffer and wants the best for them and all this stuff. To go to that parent and say, if you don't stop, you will be partially responsible for the death of your child. Because if they don't accept that, like they shut down. And if they do want to accept it, they now have to introspectively look at themselves, which they're not an addict. They're not geared for this. Most people don't ever have to look within themselves to fix a problem that is external of them, right? And so in order for them to do that, they have to be able to like critique their self in such a way that says, I am fucking up, right? Because really the way that they're looking at it is, I just love my kid. But you can love somebody to death.
Oh, yeah. Parents do that all the time.
All the time.
Working with interventions.
Yeah.
The families are sicker than the clients.
Yeah. Well, that's like the family dynamic aspect of addiction, right? Because that person, the addict, has the black sheep, has that is the person that everybody in the family points at. Right? But then you take that aspect of this person away, and now they're healing. This is what I see. The addict goes into treatment, and then they get sent back into a sick situation, and now everybody's just angry. Everybody's just mad at him, right? And I know for myself, if I am trying to heal, I go back into this situation where historically everybody that just loved me and wanted me to get better, and they're encouraging me, and now everybody's mad at me for, fucking their wife or stealing all their shit or whatever. It usually becomes a very viable option really quick. And so there's all of the, the family work is massively important. The family dynamic work is super important. Understanding family roles and who you are and what your role is and how you fell into that. All that's really important.
Yeah.
But the trauma work, Dr. Shaw. Dr. Shaw always talks about never do your trauma work in your first year of recovery. It's just not smart. Because you don't have the foundation in your recovery to be able to scratch these scabs off. And you look at treatment, there's all these buzzwords in the industry. There's the trauma-informed, right? And then the evidence-based and all this stuff. But you're sending somebody to a stabilization facility, basically, for 28 days, and you're going to expect to be able to dig into sexual trauma or neglect or physical abuse in 28 days with no commitment to aftercare. And what do you think is going to happen? Like realistically, like you're
Yeah,
going to
you're setting them
re-traumatize.
up to fail.
It's that's all it is. Like in my head, we've gotten into this situation in December of 2025 where there are normalized practices that when I look at it, I have to ask people like, are we intentionally setting people up to fail in hopes that they make it back to treatment? And it's a real question that I have, right? It isn't to criticize anybody. What I'm asking for is like,
But that's corporate America.
oh yeah, well, this is where the treatment industry, this is where this language is massively important. We used to be in the field of addiction or the field of recovery, right? Now it's the treatment industry. Definitionally, that means something, right? That means that we have industrialized this thing, right? We're now painting with broad brushes, even though we have individualized care plans and all this stuff. Painting with broad brushes, and ultimately, if it's an industry, what matters the most is the bottom line, right? Like, there's a lot of investors and ownership groups, and you know who the biggest private owner of treatment centers are? BlackRock.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know who also owns insurance companies that pay for BlackRock? Right. And so when you look at like the 10,000-foot view of what's going on in the treatment industry today, it answers a lot of questions just looking at the situation. Like you look at reimbursement rates and how it's really hurting the private owner, right? You've got to charge insurance and then maybe collect money on the back end from the client as well in order to justify the services that you're getting. How did we end up in that situation? Well, BlackRock owns all these places. They're negotiating. This becomes a standardized rate. They're trying to argue that they're not going to negotiate this rate with this treatment center because the treatment center down the road's got a better rate, right? So now they're sending all their people over there. Little do they know that the same person that owns the treatment center owns the insurance company, right? Wow. So they don't care. They're paying themselves.
What a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Huge.
And so this is the 10,000-foot view that I'm like really trying to understand in order to take Harmony Grove in a direction that, whether it's unique or not, I know there's other people out there. There are pillars in the community. There are pillars in the industry that everybody looks at and says they do an amazing job. Clinically sound, business savvy, making money, and still serving people at a high level, right? They're out there. Everybody knows them. And people recognize these names across the nation. I'm talking about Jaywalkers, the Hazeldens, the Betty Fords, like the one in Arizona. What is it? Sierra.
Yeah.
You know,
Sierra
Tucson, right? People recognize these names. Why is it? It's because they have clinical acumen. They have clinical integrity. They've got their business is on point so that they can market and get client acquisition and like really, really pull people in and give them a quality product. But it costs money. It isn't a cheap venture to like get into treatment.
Right.
And it's a high risk business too. Right. And so when you really look at what's going on and how we ended up here today, what really the thing that I point to the most is who's starting treatment centers? Addicts. Like people who enter recovery to start treatment centers. We have no business acumen. Like we don't really know what we're doing. We just know we have this vision. And if we can implement this vision, we can really change people. Right. Or we
and our heart's in it too. That's where it starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like I tell people all the time, I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I tell people all the time, if you're going to get clean and then not help people, just stay using because it's fucking pointless for you to, you know.
And that's what's going to keep you clean.
Yeah.
I learned early in my recovery, you don't get to keep what you have unless you give it away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the cliches that ultimately people thumb their nose at the cliches the most, but those are the things that work.
Right.
Right. Like the program is not in the rooms, it's in the book, but the cliches are definitely in the room, and that's definitely what works. So it's interesting. Like I'm 36, right? I spent my entire adult life using drugs. I didn't go to college. I didn't get a formal education. My education was literally from prisons and the streets. And I know I'm not the only person that sees these deficiencies, but I feel like I'm one of the only people like trying to address them.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to criticize anybody. I'm just using your models to like guide me in where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and not to keep harping on this, but sometimes I think people use trauma as an excuse.
okay.
They like meth, they like coke, they like kratom, they like using it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're going to use some kind of trauma as some made up trauma as an excuse, then that's a whole nother problem.
So this is I agree 100%. Trauma is, I think trauma is only, you can only blame trauma up to a certain point. I had to stop using very normalized terms in the industry for my own recovery, because if I kept using those words, I was going to use again. I had to stop using cravings, and I had to stop using triggers. I don't have triggers and I don't have cravings. I wanted to use, so I did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because otherwise, I'm giving a word enough power to justify and point at and be like, well, that's why I did it.
Right.
Trauma is the same, right? I was sexually abused as a kid. I'm the oldest of 9 kids, so I wasn't like traditionally abandoned, but I didn't have like the parental oversight that I probably should have. And the parental oversight that I did have was kind of, my mom was kind of a dictator, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had to be. There was a ton of us, right? And kind of heavy-handed. And so I could point to all this stuff, right? And be like, well, it was because of this, or it was because of this, or it was because of this. And I've done enough therapy around sexual abuse that at the end of a year and a half of like really intense therapy around this, my therapist looked at me and she was like, look, I can't tell you that you're using because of this. It's just not true. Right. And that was a big relief for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I already knew that I wasn't using because I was sexually abused as a kid. I was using because I really, really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped using when I really, really didn't like it anymore. Right. It's just how it was.
Right.
Most people get rescued from their suffering all too often. Right? They got the kid that's out there, he's homeless or whatever, by choice because he got kicked out or whatever.
Right.
And now it's raining, and it rains here. It like really rains here. But they call mom and be like, hey, can I come in for the night? And instead of them thinking and playing the tape through, they let them come in.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know if you just robbed them of the experience that could make them come in forever.
Right.
Jails, right? I'm having this
best interventionist in the world.
Dude,
Jails.
I have been to treatment. I've been to 7 different treatment centers. I've been to like luxury treatment centers, and I've been to state-funded treatment centers. The most effective treatment episodes I ever participated in, long-term state-funded programs, right? And that's another thing, right, is like the language around the treatment industry. It is strategic. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
It's strategic because when the term first was talked about, what they said was exposure, the length of exposure to treatment episodes dictates outcomes. Length of exposure to treatment episodes dictates the outcome. Now they've dropped the length of exposure, and it's just exposure to treatment episodes dictate outcomes to justify this 28-day situation that we've been in, right? And it's like, well, all you got to do is add one word, and it completely changes what we're talking about, right? And so you've got to be really careful around the language that you use. For me, at least, I'll talk about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be really mindful and conscious of the language that I'm using, because I'm a full-blown addict. I can delude myself and believe anything that I fucking tell myself, right? I could turn a candy bar into a problem, right? So if I'm not careful with the language that I use, I can fall into these traps really, really quickly because, hey, like this is the norm. This is what it is, right? I had this trigger, or I had this craving that I couldn't get rid of. And then Dr. Shaw talks about it all the time. He says, a thought fueled by an emotion, that is where the danger is.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah,
and so everybody, how long you been sober?
16 years.
16 years. Do you ever have thoughts about using?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's no longer fueled or powered by an emotion. That's where the danger is. Like when you, and I tell people all the time, Men who cannot control their emotions will be controlled by their emotions. And that is a dangerous person, right? Especially if they're an addict, because this is where the chronic relapse comes into play, right? This is where you do not get these parts of the human down, like, and really under control. And you still have this, what you might have 10 years of sobriety, zero recovery. And all it takes is that one incident and you're right back out there. And the relapse.
That was the excuse you were looking for.
Yeah.
Because you relapse long before you actually pick up the...
That's right. Now, what does that actually mean? Everybody typically looks at the relapse as the event, right? After somebody relapses, that's what they're looking at, is the relapse. But nobody's breaking down in a meaningful way, like what led up to it, right? There might be conversation about it in treatment, but we already know, like, that conversation is only going to be an hour long. There is no depth or weight to the actual, like, digging into it. And so that's where Dr. Shaw really stands apart from everybody else. Is if it is true that you have relapsed way before you used, then, and we all say it, like everybody says it, let's define that, right? And if we can address what that actually means, then we can prevent relapse in a real way, and we could probably predict it.
So you're saying we could spot it?
That's what Dr. Shaw's whole model's about.
Right.
Is
so how would that happen? Not going to meetings?
There's precursors.
Yeah,
there's all kinds of precursors, right? And so what you would look for, so Dr. Shaw has gotten this down to, like, even physiological things, right? Like, if we're watching a client and he's walking faster or talking faster than normal, right? There's something going on. There's a hyperactivity in the amygdala. He's stimulated somehow. But then there's obviously, like, emotional and behavioral things that you can look at too. If this person is participating in an AA program and he stops going, there's a pretty good indicator that something's different, right? If this person historically has a good relationship with his wife and now he's fighting with her, pretty good indicator, right, that something's going on. But the problem with a lot of this is we're not really looking for that. Mostly because there is no oversight in your daily life. And so this is why it's massively important to go from residential into step-down levels, is because you're in a bubble. In residential, nobody relapses in residential. I did, right? I relapsed in residential, but it's a rare thing. You're in a bubble. You're in a safe place.
Right.
We need to watch you and monitor you while you're participating in the real world, but you're still accessing levels of care, so that we can watch you and, like, watch your patterns and, like, recognize things. Self cannot critique self. I cannot look in the mirror and tell myself why I'm fucked up, at least while I'm fucked up, right? I might be able to dissect it later on, but while I'm fucked up, there is no looking in the mirror and being like, you are deficient in your spiritual uptake today, right? It is what it is.
Yeah.
And so we've got to have people that they're accountable to. We got to have people that understand what we're looking for, to watch for these signals, to be able to say, hey, come in and do this scale, right? Tell me where you're at today. Like, come in and do this. We work with, you've probably heard all this stuff with Dr. Shaw, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So we're going to recognize this behavioral pattern. We're going to come in and sit them down and say, hey, come do this really quick and see where you're scoring, right? And so there's a lot of things that a lot of people are aware of. There's even more that people are not aware of, right? That indicates you're about to relapse.
Yeah.
And when you look at Dr. Shaw's model around the hyperactivity in the amygdala, when you really look at the charts and really kind of get conceptually what he's talking about around, like, the mini seizure in the brain and the cycling and the expansion of the signal, I can look at relapse patterns that I've had in my past and be like, dude, I can map it on to what he's talking about perfectly. Right? Have you ever relapsed?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
A lot of guilt, a lot of shame, which just propelled it to get even worse.
Oh, yeah.
I can remember being in one treatment center, and I had a whole prescription of pills in my truck that was parked out in the driveway or parked out in the parking lot. And that's all I could think about the whole 30 days was that bottle of pills that was out there. And sure enough, as soon as I got in my truck to drive home, And, people ask me all the time what was different about the fourth time that I went to treatment. And, I can remember falling out of that car. This was out in West Palm, falling out of the car and crawling on all fours. I was so sick, man. I was really sick. And I fell out of that car, crawled in through the door. And, I remember hearing somebody say, and I didn't know anything about recovery back then. I never really embraced recovery. I would just go to treatment or go to detox and then nothing after that. But I heard somebody say, Randy, in order to get this, you got to have the desperation of a drowning man. And that's when I heard the word desperation, and I was desperate at that point. And that made a huge impact on me that night. And I knew that I was in for the fight of my life. And, I think I'm a pretty tough guy. I've been in a lot of battles. You don't get to stay in the NFL for 10 years unless you're winning most of those battles. But I knew that I was in for the fight of my life that night. And I had never had that experience in the other 3 or 4 times that I went to treatment before that. So, I always credit desperation with the reason that last time was so successful, and accountability. Because after treatment, I stayed accountable to people, and I had never done that before.
Yeah, I mean, so 4 times in treatment, and was it always? What were your treatment episodes like?
Group therapy, one-on-ones, basic stuff.
Okay.
We never really addressed anything that was. We didn't really address any real trauma because I didn't have any.
Yeah.
And it was basically just babysitting me.
Yeah. So as somebody who can't point to trauma, and I'll ask you like this. Why do you stay clean?
I don't want to disappoint anybody, I've done all that before, and I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to wreck anybody's lives. I want to end the legacy with me and my family. I don't want my children to grow up and be like that, or my grandkids. So a lot of it is, just the pride in being a sober father and being present. And that's the only way I can do it is to stay sober.
Did you go to college?
Baylor.
Yeah. Did you graduate?
Communications, yeah.
Communications. So I think that there's 3 real human superpowers. It's childbirth, high-level math, and recovery, right?
Did you say high-level math?
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it's a superpower. Trust me, it's a superpower. That high-level math has changed the world in more ways than anybody could ever know. Right. And it's also a very small amount of people that can actually do it. Right.
But makes sense.
And then childbirth, obviously, that is like the miracle that introduces every single person to this world. And then recovery. The thing about recovery that I think makes it a superpower is we don't know. We don't know the effect that when Randy Grimes crawled into that treatment center for the last time, you didn't know the effect that you were going to have just by virtue of doing that.
No.
When I got clean, we still don't know the effect that this is going to have. And so the reason why I say that it's a superpower is because there is something supernatural to what's going on outside of me and you.
When did you start thinking about doing all this? Was it while you were in treatment?
My last relapse.
Okay.
So I had 3.5 years of sobriety. I did not have 3.5 years of recovery. And it was really easy for me not to use because I had a bunch of time over my head. Right. And the second those obligations were satisfied with the courts, I started a mental relapse that really set me up to be in the position that I'm in today. And what happened is this: I was working a construction job that doesn't exist in Texas. It exists in California. So I was installing and trenching wet utilities. The water table is such here that they don't trench here. They do directional drilling. So they drill the hole and then put the pipe in it. I was trenching from the top, installing and then covering the pipe. So I get here and I'm like searching for a job, can't find it. just one thing kind of stacked onto the other, right? And it was one excuse after another excuse after another excuse. And I believe in God, so I don't believe in luck. The way that I define luck is preparation meeting good timing, right? So my preparation was all negative, and then the timing was still negative, right? And my luck kind of pushed me into this relapse. But this relapse, and I'm talking about, I have been to prison multiple times, been homeless for years, lost a marriage, lost a kid, alienation from my 10 siblings, alienation from society, just all of that. This was the most pivotal moment of my life. These couple weeks really pointed me in the direction that I'm in. So then I get clean, and I'm coming up on 2 years again. But I go and I get clean, and the mindset that I had now at this point was, if I want to stay clean, I know that there are a bunch of different pathways to get to the same place, and it's ultimately service, right? Like, if I want to stay clean, I have to help other people. Bottom line, right? It could be through the rooms, it could be through this, it could be through that, but it all goes back to the center of the wheel, which is all service, right? And so I'm like, how am I going to do this, right? Start doing all the things, going to meetings, working the steps, working with people. You probably I was sponsored by a guy named Bubba. He lives out in Austin, like between Austin and San Antonio. It's like a big deal out there. So I'm going to meetings, and I'm going in, and I'm miserable. Like I'm literally like, if I'm holding on by the seat of my pants, and I'm miserable. And I lost my daughter, my like, I didn't lose her. I gave her away, right? My parents took her, and me and my wife are struggling. And we're not struggling to stay clean. We're just struggling to live life now, right? Like, and I'm like desperately trying to find an answer.
Was she using with you?
We had relapsed together, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we were homeless together too. So we've been together for coming up on 9 years, and we were living under that same bridge together, right? So then, but when this relapse happens, I meet my mentor, and this is an amazing man, ex-Navy SEAL. After he got kicked out of the SEALs for failing a steroid test, he picked up a crazy fentanyl habit, started selling coke, was pitching multi-million-dollar decks for this weed company, found a lot of success, but was fucking miserable. So then he, in order to discipline himself, he went into the French Foreign Legion for 5 years.
Oh, wow. You can get kicked out of the SEALs for steroids? Wow.
Yeah, it's a no tolerance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Zero tolerance. They have a zero tolerance policy. But how often do they test for steroids? Not often.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
But you got to hear this guy's story. It was like just one arrest after the other after the other. And the last arrest that he had, he was at a man, I forget what concert, but it's like an old timer country concert. And he steals this security's golf cart, and they're chasing him, right? And they catch him, and now the cops are chasing him, and they shoot him with the stun guns, and he's ripping it off of them, and he's jumping fences, and they're watching his commanding officers are watching the body cam footage of this, and they're going, no fucking way, not a chance, because 3 years before that, there was like a big deal. He single punch knocked out some dude at a bar. It was all on footage. And it was like a big scandal where like Navy SEAL like almost kills this guy, right?
With one punch.
With one punch, right? And like dude wrecked this guy, hospitalized him, like did permanent damage, sued him for $500,000, like just crazy, right? And so his commanding officers are going, you're not getting away with this one. Like test him. Test clean. He's like, send it to the National Olympic Training Center and test him for steroids. And he said it lit up like a Christmas tree. But so yeah, they kicked him out. But I meet this guy, and he basically tells me like, everything that you're trying to do right now, stop. Go to sleep. Wake up in the morning. Go to the gym. Do 100 push-ups at the gym. Walk for half an hour, but do it at the gym, and then come back and call me. And that really changed the trajectory of my recovery. Just just putting this one piece of recovery in place, which was the physical, right? Because typically we really address the mental and the emotional and the spiritual, but we're men, and there's 4 parts to us. There's the mental, spiritual, emotional, and the physical. And I came up with this, and so if this is the goal, to be balanced, and one of them is lacking, it's got gravity and it will pull the rest of you into it. And that's what was happening with me.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to put all the rest of this stuff in place, but let me show you a picture. This is what I looked like almost 2 years ago. And then I met Taylor. This is what I looked like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? And so that part of me was suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it, because every time I got into recovery, people would say, well, now you're in recovery, you should eat better and work out. And that's it. That's where it ends. Right? There is no medical billing code for physical training, for nutritional education. There is none. And so I hear it universally, well, now you're sober, you should eat better and work out. But nobody really talks about the importance of that. And he really helped me conceptualize and put into place, this is why it's so massively important. He's in recovery too, right? Picked up a big fentanyl habit, did drugs his whole life. But I got on his program, and it works. It works for me.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk a lot about athletes, because I was a former athlete, but
Mm-hmm.
The work that I do with first responders and veterans, they're the same type. They're in that same classification of transitional trauma. And of losing that uniform, of losing that
their identity.
Mm-hmm. And so I really, it's like a natural fit. And when I put these guys in the same room together, if I put athletes together with first responders or veterans, man, the clinician might as well leave, because they're going to take care of it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's their mentality. And man, I just love, it's like poetry in motion to watch all those groups go together like that.
Yeah. Well, you and I have had talks behind the scenes around the direction that we're going with that track. Because it's going to be a professionals track, right? But it's going to serve as first responders, vets, and professionals. Because they do have a lot of the same transitional trauma, but they're also not. And I'm not trying to say that people are better than other people or whatever, but they're just different than the garden variety. Where, well, first of all, you can't. It's really hard to put a first responder, specifically cops, into just a general milieu,
right?
Because they don't know if they're going to end up arresting this dude or having to give this dude a ticket or whatever.
Right.
There's these other things that they worry about. And then also being targeted and all that stuff too.
And I think there's a different level of pride and ego that goes with those groups. Right or wrong, it is what it is.
So the Houston Police Department, it's either the Houston Police Department or the Houston Sheriff Department, one of those two. They are government departments, and so all of the information that they gather is public knowledge, right? And they released every year they release all these reports or whatever. This is one of the biggest forces in the United States, and they also publicly release statistics around addiction in the force. And this is one of the most heavily addicted forces in the United States.
Oh, wow.
That deals with addiction of active duty members.
Wow. Really?
Right? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It was really eye-opening, because I've been to I interact with or deal with or have done work with every treatment center in Houston. And everybody talks about their first responder track, but I never see first responders when I go there, right? And so it's there's obviously a real need for these services. Now, I don't know if they're going to different states, because there are really reputable first responders track programs.
Right.
But why aren't we offering services here in the level that they need them? And this also just goes back to we do our heroes so wrong. The government does the vets terribly. The VA system is a joke. I've talked to a couple of vets that went into the VA substance abuse program, and it sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. It
doesn't matter if you're in Florida or Texas.
No.
It's a joke.
Yeah. And I mean, if you finally meet the criteria to go to these VA programs, it is like a psych ward, from what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of it is just crazy stuff going on. They're not doing the actual trauma work that they need, and these are severely traumatized people. Like we're talking about vets that are also combat vets. They have a very unique set of traumas.
Oh yeah, PTSD and
Wartime PTSD or active combat PTSD. How are you going to send like an active duty, like a retired active duty, like combat vet into a milieu where like the average trauma is like your dad hit you on the weekends when he was drunk? Like, dude, there's a disconnect.
Right.
It doesn't mesh. And so
but that's what a lot of these programs do that say they have a true veteran or first responder track.
I know.
They lump them in there with your regular Tom, Dick, or Harry, you know, and that's such an injustice because, I mean, this is life and death stuff, especially for those guys. And if you don't do it right, then you're responsible.
So this is the responsibility part, right? Where I always talk about if you take responsibility from somebody, and it doesn't matter if it's the professionals, the parents, friends, if you take responsibility from them, you're inheriting that responsibility, right? And this is where like when something bad happens, part of this is you, right? Like if I take responsibility for, if I got a daughter, right? Let's say 20 years from now, she gets arrested and I bail her out and I give her like the best lawyer and all this stuff. I took responsibility for that. And if she gets another DUI or heaven forbid, gets into a car accident and dies, and she didn't get to experience the full benefit of the consequences of her actions,
right.
That is partially on me, right? And I tell people all the time, my oldest daughter's 4. I am thoroughly convinced that it falls squarely on the shoulders of the father to raise a healthy woman. It is my responsibility how that girl turns out.
Well, you're the leader of the household.
Absolutely.
Supposedly.
No, I mean, by title,
that's the way we're trained as men.
By title, it absolutely is the truth that the man is the head of the household. But in practice, that's not the norm today. Like that's just not the way that it goes because most households don't have 2 parents in the home anymore.
True. Yeah.
Right. And so typically, like in a just the average American home today, you've got a father who's trying to fill both roles or a mother who's trying to fill both roles. And it isn't optimal.
Right.
You got to have both. And it's for a good reason. Like you've got to have both components of those parental figures ingrained into the person to raise a healthy, fully formed adult.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's men's fault. Why? I mean, you look at like you hear all these stories. Like, how'd she end up on a pole? She's got daddy issues.
Right.
Right. That it isn't that she got mommy issues. Never have I heard that. Right. Or like, how'd she end up on the street? Like, she's got daddy issues. And so I look at all this. And I look at my experience and my wife's experience and go, if I'm going to take responsibility for this little girl, then I have to just assume that this is all on me to create the outcome for her that I think is appropriate. You know, so it's I'm just starting down that road too.
Yeah.
And I'm going, God, how do I do this?
Well, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, and every day's different. That's for sure.
So you've got kids, right?
I've got kids. I've got grandkids. I've got 5 grandkids.
Wow.
Thank goodness I'm not raising them.
Yeah.
You know, and in today's world, social media and everything that goes on.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare out there. And I do not envy my daughter and son-in-law or my son and his wife. For raising kids in this atmosphere today. It's tough.
It is tough.
Very tough.
Have you heard of this? It's like this naturally occurring phenomenon that's going on with Generation Alpha. We're talking about 12 to 2 years old. So these 12 to 2-year-olds, obviously like not the 2-year-olds, but in this generation, you're seeing this thing that these kids are doing where they're making commitments to sobriety and chastity at very young ages.
Wow, how do they even know
I don't
what
know.
they're committing to?
I don't know, other than they have more access to information than anybody's ever had.
Well, I agree with that.
And
Good
so,
or bad, you know?
it's good and bad,
Mhm.
right? Because that can go the complete opposite way. And it probably does more often than not because just the average person has so much access to pornography today.
And you're calling it what? Generation what?
Yeah, Generation Alpha. It is
Never heard of it.
generation. It's because they're really young still.
Mhm.
They're not really on the radar. So we've heard of like the millennials, which I'm a part of, and then Generation Z, which we're watching.
And I'm a baby boomer, so.
You're a boomer, right? Well, the generation after that is Generation Alpha,
Okay.
and they're 2 to 12 right now.
Wow.
Yeah, but they're these young kids, and this is what I think's going on. Who are their parents? My generation is their parents, right? So they're looking at my generation and going, "These people are fucked up," right?
Well, they got that right.
No, they do got it right. I used to apologize to people, like when I would like first interact with people your age and stuff. I would always be like, I just want to apologize for my generation up front. And they'd be like, well, what generation are you? I'm a millennial. And they'd be like, oh, yeah. Like, yeah. And what scares me is we're about to take control of the country.
I know.
That's scary.
I know. You guys are our future. That's scary.
That is really scary.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a cycle, right? Like where this is the cycle. It's hard men create soft times, soft times create soft men, soft men create hard times creates hard men. It's this cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we're in the soft men part, right? And in order to make hard men, you got to have hard times. We're heading there. I'm thoroughly convinced of this. And it's going to be my generation's fault that like some shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
I'm really thoroughly convinced of this.
Well, people's, they frown on alpha males now, which is
that's like a
not
bad
good.
word.
Yeah.
That's a bad
it's
word.
not.
Yeah. Toxic masculinity it's so insidious the way that they did this, right? And I look at like the history of how this happened. And there's a book called Occult Feminism, and it talks about first wave feminism and second wave and third wave, and now we're into fourth wave, and like women's suffrage and like how we really were tricked into like, well, anyway, but downstream from all this stuff is healthy manhood, like healthy masculinity is now demonized, right? And everybody's being lumped into these, like the red pill. You know what that is?
Yeah.
The red pill or the black pill, or like there's all these data packets that are kind of informing people about who are who. And it's like the average healthy man, which is not the average, right? Because right now the average is like really unhealthy. No communication skills, no emotional security, no emotional maturity, none of that. That is pretty normal. And so the average healthy male is looked at and demonized because you can't control them. They're going to do what they need to do in order to satisfy whatever it is they need to satisfy.
Well, that's right. You're right.
And so that is demonized because you can't put a leash on that. Right? Like when you look at like the 90s and the generation that like you participated in, I think about like my childhood and like the Sammy Sosas and like these types of dudes, and we're like, these are some beasts of men, right? That doesn't exist anymore, right? The ability to stand up for, and I'm not saying that they were standing up for good things or what they believed in or whatever, but the average ability to stand up for the right thing or the things that you believe in, that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, you run the risk of being canceled.
That's a crazy thing too.
Right. So a lot of people don't open their mouth. They stay neutral, or they stay frozen in their little zones. And they don't come out like they used to. You don't have the guys proclaiming to be the alpha males anymore like they used to.
Yeah.
And the John Waynes and
the Gary Cooper.
Those guys. Because nobody wants to get canceled. Yeah. And it's so easy to get doxxed now. And next thing you know, your whole family's being threatened because you believe one way or you said this one thing or whatever. It's brutal out there.
It is. It's really brutal. My grandpa, he's how old are you?
65.
Okay, so my grandpa's like 80. I think he's like 82. I was raised like in his office. He had like black and whites of John Wayne. And like I went to George Jones's last concert ever with him. These are like men. Like these are people that you look to, and it's like these are like some really manly men. That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And in my head, I'm like, how did this? I think it was an intentional deterioration of what masculinity is. I think it was very intentional. And ultimately, what it does is it consolidates power to a very small contingency of people.
Right.
Because if like the average man is cowering in the corner, they can do whatever the fuck they want, and we're not going to say shit, right? But
But we're really getting off topic now.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a superpower.
Well, and like I said, that desperation is what made the difference for me. And I can remember as a 8-year-old kid, and I tell this story all the time. I was up in Tyler at Tyler State Park. I was with my family out at a picnic or family reunion or whatever it was. But I can remember being out on, those paddle boats that you used to sit on and you could turn them with your legs and all that. I was out on one of those by myself, and I fell off of that thing. And I got my feet tangled up in something on the bottom of the lake. And I can remember how desperate I was to get back to the surface, how I was clawing at the water, how I was screaming underwater, and just desperate to get back to the surface. And that's where my first taste of real desperation started.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. And that was one of the first things that popped into my brain that night when I heard that guy say that about desperation of a drowning man. And, I used to get up every morning while I was in treatment, and I would sit at a picnic table. And this one particular morning, and I was sobbing uncontrollably because, I wanted to make my treatment mean something. I said this earlier, I wanted it to mean something to my family and all that I'd put them through, and my finances and reputation and all that. And, that's kind of where that was kind of the birth of what I'm doing now. I didn't know what I wanted to do then, but I knew I wanted to give back. And I think that was also a huge part of my recovery. And then just doing the next right thing, working with sponsees, working with the sponsor first, and then working with sponsees. And just, the main thing that I would tell them is just to keep recovery simple and do the next right thing. Because that's all recovery is, doing the next right thing. And, you try to make it hard. You try to break it down. You try to put yourself in situations that you don't need to. All you got to do is just do the next right thing.
Yeah.
And so recovery's been awesome for me.
Yeah.
It's something that I think everybody, whether you're an addict or not, should go through.
I think so too.
12 steps is great. Giving back is great.
Yeah.
And it's just something everybody should do.
I have said it many, many times that I think everybody in the world would benefit from a 12-step.
I agree.
Just the amount of introspection that you have to do, and really like the honest inventories. Like most people never have to look at that stuff. Like you've got high level like CEOs, Fortune 500 people that fully qualify to do this kind of work, their own self work. They never have to because they operate at such a high level. They make the money. They've got the houses. They've got all this stuff. But you always see it. They've always got anger issues or like 5 wives or like it's like if you did the self work, that probably wouldn't be like that.
Right, I agree.
Right. But yeah, I think it's where people get lost in the weeds when they try to interpret something that wasn't meant to be interpreted. You just do it how it says it, right? It isn't, there's like these arbitrary things that get put into place. Like you go to a treatment center and you do the 12-step packets. And it's like, in order to finish this correctly, you've got to have 25 resentments and 5 people that you got to make amends with. And it's like, if you don't have that number, you didn't finish it.
You didn't do it right.
And it's like, show me in the book where it says that, it's like, but then you've got these people out there that'll take people through the book to do the work out of the book. And this is like how Bill and Bob wanted it done. Right. And
why they wrote the book.
Yeah. I mean, people talk about it's a God-inspired book. Well, then why are we trying to change it? Why is man interpreting this It's very plain language.
Because we're always trying to reinvent the wheel.
We are.
We think we're smarter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every generation thinks they're smarter.
Yeah.
And that gets us in trouble.
It does. I think we're finally hitting that that critical mass point where, historically there's been that precedent where the child should exceed the station of the father. I don't think that's really possible anymore. I think that a lot of people have reached such levels of success that it's like almost impossible for a lot of the generations that are coming after them to exceed that. And then, the education quality has dropped significantly. And then how do you expect somebody to excel past the parents when they don't have the parents present? Right? It's like,
good point.
There's a lot of these things that happened systematically that I think were intentional, and it all really does feed back into the addiction climate in the world today, right? I think all of this really points back to the same thing, is the deficiencies in the family.
And it's got so easy for parents to not be present.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's work related, relationship related, or whatever.
Dude, every kid's got an iPhone. Every kid's got an iPad. Every kid's got the digital babysitter.
And the parents do too.
And they're learning
They're
from
just
the parents,
as guilty, yeah.
For sure, right? Because they're seeing mom and dad, they're just on the phone, right? They're not present with the kid. I hear it all the time where it's like the mom is in her room upstairs and the kid's in his room downstairs. Like when I was a kid, my mom would yell and I would have to run to the room as fast as possible. Yes, ma'am, right?
Right.
Now they text each other. There is no interaction even, it's...
Well, they don't sit down and eat a meal together.
That's another
that's
thing.
Huge.
Okay, my wife can't... my wife's a redheaded white girl, and I've seen her burn water. Literally. I come home, and there's a smoking pot on the thing. She burned this pot of water. I was like, how is that even possible? But... the family dynamics have suffered so much. And all this really does feed into the addiction. I tell people my philosophy around this is the landscape of addiction has changed drastically in the last 5 years. We've never had a drug hit the market and within 2 years of it hitting the market become the leading cause of death for people under 40 in the way that fentanyl did. Fentanyl is in everything now. It's killing everybody. When I started doing drugs, there were people that had been doing drugs for 30, 40 years, probably still out there doing crack and slime and heroin. They'll never die because of it, but you do fentanyl one time and it'll kill you.
Right.
And you can have a tolerance to it and you get that one batch and it'll kill you. The landscape of addiction has changed. And the thing that blows my mind the most about this is that the way that we are treating it hasn't changed. And I think that we needed to evolve around the addictions evolving as well. And we just kind of got stuck. And you look at the efficacy and the outcomes, right? Bill and Bob had almost 100% success rate for years. And 100 years later, it's almost completely flipped, where it's a 99% failure rate. And this book that I'm reading really kind of answers these questions. Like, how did this happen? And it's privatization of treatment, payers incentivize and really set the pace for what treatment looks like. You got to justify why this person needs these services. And then, something that I say, we claim to be in the business of saving lives. Something that I've learned is that I think it's half true. I think we're in the business of saving lives, but only the ones that can afford it. Right? Because we're not in the business of saving every life.
Right.
We're in the business of saving the lives that can afford it.
Unfortunately, right.
And it's just the way that it evolved. And I'm not saying that it isn't an intentional thing to be sacrificing lives to make money. But when you really look at what we're doing, that's really what's happening. And it's unfortunate that we've ended up in this situation. How do you change it? I have no fucking clue.
Right.
I know that...
I don't know that you can.
Well, this is the thing.
Because you still have to run everything like a business.
Oh, yeah. But here's the thing. The margins of this this industry are insane, right? High benefit, high risk, very rewarding as far as possibilities, right? But when you're talking about a 30-40% margin, what would it actually cost on the bottom line to implement real family services? Maybe you're talking about going from 40% to 38%, 37%.
Right.
We're willing to take that loss, right? And so I can't systematically change what's going on in the rest of the world, but I have full control of what's going on in this program, right? And so a lot of the conversations around, well, what is Harmony Grove going to be, and what are we going to do, and how are we going to represent ourselves? And the initial conversation, I think we talked about this, but the initial conversations with my partners were, we can do this right, or we can make money. And if we're going to make money, I'll just do something else and you guys can do this, right? And so they put me in charge of operations, and they put me in charge of making sure that that isn't the case. They're like, if you want that, then you do it. And that's fine, right? Because this was my idea. This is what I wanted to do. And so you take out you put up a barrier between the financial side of the business and the operations side, that does something.
Mm-hmm.
You put somebody in charge of the operations and the program management and all that stuff that has nothing to do with the financial side, that does something, right? You put all of these things in place that says operations has nothing to do with finances, and that solves a lot of problems. But when you've got clinicians that are talking to their clients about, hey, you haven't made your payment yet, that deteriorates.
You got a breakdown right there.
It deteriorates the clinical alliance, right? It deteriorates the clinical product that you are offering, right? So there's all these things that you could possibly do.
Right.
And really it's conversations like this that's dictated how we're going to operate in this business, right? And so,
well, let me ask you the classic question.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you with higher power? And the importance of it in what we do.
Oh, yeah. So I think the easiest way for me to say this is you either believe in God or you believe in luck. And if you believe in luck, that's fine. I don't believe in luck, right? And you can point to every step of the way of this treatment center and say, I got really lucky. This was probably the easiest thing that I've ever done. Everything really fell into place. Mm-hmm. And I tell people all the time, I'm in the backseat of my own life right now. Like there's something else controlling the direction that all of this is going. And 18 months into my 3-year treatment stay is where I had my first breakthrough. And what happened was I ended up staff at a program because I was in this program for so long. They made a deal with me. They said, you can be here for 2 years, but you have to work. Right? I was like, okay. So I ended up becoming the supervisor, and I ended up leading a Bible study, right? That was part of my responsibilities. I had to lead a Bible study every night. I'm not a Christian at the time. I'm not a God person. I was raised in a Mormon household. So when I fell away from all that, I was an atheist. There was no God. God doesn't want anything to do with me, all that, right? And I was leading this Bible study, and I heard these two men, they told these stories. And they were telling a story that I had lived exactly, like point for point was exactly the same. The difference was they said, this is what happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this was the outcome, and this is how God worked in my life. And then the next person, this is what happened, and this is what happened, and then this, and this was the outcome, and then this is how God worked in my life. The only difference was I'd never given God the proper attribution in my story. And I heard these stories and I said, maybe there is a God that knows me intimately. Like these are literally my thoughts. I'm like, maybe God does know who I am, and maybe he really was protecting me. And that was all it took, and it completely changed everything. Yeah, but that was,
and maybe God was waiting on you.
Oh, for sure. That's the thing.
Not that he didn't know who you were. You didn't know who he was.
For sure.
And what he was willing to do.
I can no longer look back on my life and justifiably or practically say that there is no God. Because I can look back on my life and say, I should be dead. Mm-hmm. I should be in prison for the rest of my life. And if it wasn't for something else that was guiding all of this, I would be. Right? And now I just had another daughter.
He trusts you with 2 babies. You know?
2 girls.
2 girls.
Dude. Right? And so there are all these things that I can point to where individually I could maybe justify it away, right? Or just kind of be like, yeah, it's whatever. But one thing after the other, it's a long line of succession of one thing after another, where I can no longer look behind me and say, yeah, this was all luck. It's not a thing.
Right.
And so.
But where were you when all that happened? How far along in your recovery did that happen?
18 months after I
18 months,
yeah.
Okay.
And this is what I always say.
So you were deep in your addiction by then.
Oh, yeah. So
you'd already gone through several relapses.
Oh, yeah. So the way that it happened was I started slamming heroin at 16, right before I turned 17.
Mm-hmm.
This was at 32.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I had exposure to recovery. But the most time that I had put together was 64 days in that 17 years. Mm-hmm. And so I had exposure to recovery. I had short stints of sobriety, mm-hmm. but I always was very aware that I wasn't done.
And your family was pretty involved in the spiritual part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like you weren't exposed to it.
So it's funny. My dad, after I come back to the family, because I didn't talk to my family for over a decade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was an intentional thing. I was like, I'm not going to straddle the fence with these people. I watched my uncle destroy his relationship with my family by doing the 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go out until I'm done and I'm ready to come back. And that's what I did. And I had this conversation with my dad maybe a year ago where I was like, look, I don't believe in the same God that you do, but I do believe in God. And I really know that he knows me and really has guided me. And I can't justifiably look back and say that there is no God anymore. And he was like, do you think that all of those years went by and there weren't people praying for you every day? Mm-hmm. I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. And it's like, either God is or he isn't. That's just the facts. He's either there or he isn't. It isn't like he's there sometimes and then he's not there other times. He's either there or he's not. And if he's there, he's everything. And if he's not, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
But as far as the God piece and what we do today, if I'm not spiritually in alignment with what my God needs for me, so I have an agreement with my God. And I don't know what to call him. I'm thoroughly convinced I'll never see him or hear his voice because he could probably appear to me and be like, I'm God. And I'd be like, yeah, right. But there's somebody out there. I don't know who this person is. I don't know where they are. I don't know when I'll interact with them. I don't know any of that. I just know that there's this one person out there and I'm supposed to help that person. And if I'm not in a position to help that person when the time comes, then I have completely failed and all this is pointless. And so I don't know if it's the person that I'm supposed to help or if it's going to be a ripple effect and that it's actually their family
right.
or their whatever.
Right.
And I don't know if I've already met that person. I don't know if I'm going to meet them in 10 years. I don't know if I'm going to meet them. I don't know. And so I have to stay ready for that position to open up for me to fill it and run that play correctly in order for me to really fulfill what I've come here to do.
That's awesome. And how do you know you haven't already heard from him?
I don't.
Because you've had this vision.
I don't.
For Harmony Grove.
I don't. But that's the whole, I don't know how this agreement came into where it is today. I don't know if it's already happened, but I have to assume that it didn't because I don't know. So I'm just going to continue down this path until it runs to its logical end, whatever that means.
Doing the next right thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
what about
awesome.
you?
Me too. I was raised a Christian. We were in church every Sunday. I realized that I wouldn't have got as far as I did in my athletics had it not been for him. Got over some of the injuries that I had. I wouldn't have. I met and married a preacher's daughter. That wouldn't have happened, without God. And even in this, my recovery, that's been the biggest part of it. My mom was such a super Christian and a prayer warrior for me. I've got all kinds of messages that she wrote on a little stickum pad, what she was praying for me that day, and she would put it on the fridge or somewhere in the house, and she kept all those, and she gave them to me after I got clean and sober. And, those meant a lot to me. So I knew she was praying for me. My wife was praying for me. My children were praying for me. They just wanted their dad back, and that's what I tried to give them. And I try to stay present every day, not only for those kids, my kids, but for my grandkids too, because they've never witnessed me like that.
Yeah.
I've got a clean slate with them.
Yeah.
But my children, me and my wife wrote a book a couple of years ago. We released it at the Super Bowl.
I saw.
And that was just we wrote that to be a vehicle for our family to heal. Everybody had a part in it. My daughter, my son, my mom, my brother, my sister. Everybody had a role in that book, and it was meant for everybody to heal in the Grimes family. And it's been so much more than that. It's helped a lot of people, and we're really proud of it. But healing was what it was all about. And there's a lot of families out there that need to heal. Sometimes they're too stubborn or too resentful or whatever the reason. Pride, ego keeps them from healing. And it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's just a little forgiveness and trust and supporting the person to do the next right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that a big part of that is that they're not geared for that healing. We're not taught how to be healthy anymore. Like we're just taught to live.
Especially mentally, yeah.
So the epidemic of silent suffering, you've heard of this, right? Yeah. We're just not taught how to be like a healthy, well-rounded human anymore. We're just taught to like, you live and survive. And if you make it to a level of success where you're living, then you're like on this pedestal. But there is no healthy communication anymore. There is no like looking at yourself in the mirror and like making those self-assessments with a clear head anymore.
Is that a breakdown in the family unit?
I fully believe that it was the deterioration of the nuclear family that contributed to all these downstream problems.
And a lot of that started with social media and with...
Yeah, I think it became much more pronounced, but I also think that I really think this started like somewhere in the 60s with like the free love stuff, and like there was like a breakdown in it wasn't even a breakdown. There was a shift in definition of what love was. Right? There was a shift in what people understood familial love to be, and it took hold. Like, there was like the summer of love and all that stuff. Like, and I think it also started before that too, with like when you're talking about. I'm gonna get canceled over this shit today, but when you really talk about like the first and second wave feminism, first wave feminism was something very specific. They wanted their rights, and then you start getting into these after waves of what feminism became, and it really like the productive rights and like all this stuff, and it's like. You're fighting for I'm gonna get canceled. You're like fighting for the right to like kill your children. So when you take the value of that human being away from the equation and what that does to people mentally and spiritually and all this stuff, like there's a lot of ramifications for things that I don't think people like equate with the action.
Right.
And then social media took hold, and this shit caught fire, and the deterioration and the breakdown of communication. Have you seen that? There's like a famous meme. It's like kids in 1995 at a park. It's like a picture, and they're all playing on the screens
all over the place, right?
And then like kids in 2025, and they're all
staring at their screens. Right.
That in and of itself, like kids don't play the same anymore. Play is massively important for the maturation of a child.
Oh, yeah. And then development is crucial to that.
The way that bullying has become a thing. Like, I'm sure when you were a kid, by today's standards, kids would have been going to jail, right? Because I know that there was like interactions between me and my friends that if people were looking at it today, we would have been in trouble for bullying and like hazing and all this stuff. But
we took care of it ourselves back then.
That's massively important for the development of like human interaction, is to like learn how to deal with these problems. We've taken all that away from these kids. We put up such big bumpers and like put them in such a bubble that it's like they're growing up fully sanitized. You know, like there is no falling and scraping your knee and learning not to run down that hill again.
Right.
There is no like.
That comes back to the lack of consequences. We talked about that earlier.
For sure.
Lack of consequences out there.
Yeah.
And that's a parental problem. It's a society problem. It's a law enforcement problem. It's everywhere.
So the law enforcement problem, even, right? You look at the stuff that happened in, what was that, 2019 with the defund the police and all that.
Oh yeah.
Dude, these are the people that like patrol our street to keep us safe from people like who I used to be, right? But you demonize them and you treat them like shit. And
you
now
call them Nazis.
You call them fascists and Nazis and pigs and all this stuff. There was a time in my life where that was the enemy. I was a criminal, right? I was criminally minded. I was participating in gangs and the drug trade and like all that stuff, right? It was my job to circumvent their job. But I always had a respect for what they were doing. And I would never like assault a cop or like spit on a cop or anything like that, because if you caught me, you just did your job right. I didn't do mine right.
Right.
But there are people out there who don't have that just fundamental respect for law enforcement that are out there protesting against them, spitting on them, throwing rocks and all this crazy stuff. And it's like, who are you going to call when somebody breaks into your house? Are you going to deal with it yourself? You don't believe in guns.
You're going to call a social worker?
Right. No, you're going to call on men in uniforms with badges and guns to come and protect you, right? But you want to defund them and you want to spit on them and you want to like curse them out in the streets and make it's crazy. And this is like the de-evolution of where our society has come to.
Well, it makes for a good narrative for them.
Oh yeah.
And that's all it is a narrative, because you're right. They're going to call them when they need them.
Yep. Yeah. And then once again, this goes back to the demonizing of the masculine man or the alpha man. Well, guess who's going to show up when you call the cop?
Alpha man.
An alpha man. Like,
thank goodness.
Yeah. Dude, it's so crazy. But okay.
Well, this has been awesome, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, we kind of went all over the place, but that's good.
Yeah. I like these conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sure this probably will happen again.
Good. I hope so. Yeah.
But thank you for your time and thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to My Last Relapse. I'm Matt Handy, the founder of Harmony Grove Behavioral Health, Houston, Texas, where our mission is to provide compassionate, evidence-based care for anyone facing addiction, mental health challenges, and co-occurring disorders. Find out more at harmonygrovebh.com. Follow and subscribe to My Last Relapse on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you like to stream podcasts. Got a question for us? Leave a message or voicemail at mylastrelapse.com. If you're feeling overwhelmed or struggling, you don't have to face it alone. Reaching out for support is a sign of strength, and help is always available. If you or anyone you know needs help, give us a call 24 hours a day at 888-691-8295.